Greetings, folks. So, I went to Wikisocion, and I was rather surprised to see this definition of TI that is a bit more like my own description of it. So you can see here there's a subjective component, and so there are a lot of people who would say in Socionics, oh, Kersey ISTJ, so the contender guardian, would be LSI in Socionics. Well, just sticking to their own rules and doing things and not relying on external authorities, well, that doesn't fit. So that's not consistent with that. So this sounds more like that would fit ISTP. So an ISTP would be typed as LSI, but it depends on which Socionics person you ask. So, for instance, Jack, I don't wish to promote him, so I'm only just saying Jack. So Jack would say, oh, LSI is like, and he would say, oh, the definitions on Wikisocion are not accurate. So lots of different schools of Socionics have different definitions. So probably the point of view of the people writing this is that, well, I know that TI is subjective, and I know that I don't like to rigorously follow rules, and I think for myself, so I'm going to say that it's like that for LSI. So, yeah. But the point here is about the stuff about logic. Generally associated with the ability to recognize logical consistency and correctness. So, there's a problem with that. If you then start putting into your definition too much about this kind of logico-mathematical intelligence, you then start ending up in a place where that can be refuted by finding people who have an ethical preference and are in Mensa and can solve Mensa problems that deal with that kind of, and I'll show those in a moment. These are the problems here. I'll just give you a quick preview of the problems. This is a good one, the changing trains. That's a good one as well. The reason why I like this one is that this someone can't cheat by using a formula. Whereas this one is a little bit more open to cheating by using a pre-learned formula. So, yeah. So, yeah, this is just how I did these graphics. So, my point here is that if you define, if when you describe TI and you start saying stuff like, at least they put associated with the ability to recognize logical consistency and correctness, generate and apply classifications. And say, okay, but you've got to be able to account for, say, an ethical type, someone with a feeling type, someone with a feeling preference, who can do these problems. So I'm asking my audience watching this, especially if you have a feeling preference and you can solve these, what do you then think that means when describing TI? Because you've got two things which are, so two things to note. Like if you can solve these, questions, then you've got a good logico-mathematical ability, and probably in 2% of the population. So when we're defining TI, we can't then just say that TI is logico-mathematical ability, because then we're sort of saying that everyone with a logical preference is in the top half of the population, assuming you've got an equal division between a logical preference and an ethical preference. Then, because if TI were sort of logical intelligence, then you could have no feeling types in Mensa in the top 2%, because they would all be here. So, for example, ESFJ. Now, my own doctor is ESFJ, ESE. So that would be one-dimensional TI. So if you know any ENFJs there, so if you know anyone who's all EFs have one-dimensional TI. It doesn't mean there can't be a Mensa though. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that TI is not logico-mathematical ability. We test in the definition of the function. Because if you're saying a type, so again here, ESFJ, if you're saying a type has one-dimensional TI, then you're saying, okay, this type is really bad at TI. So what are they really bad at? And if you say TI is logical mathematical intelligence, then you can go and test all the ESFJs and find any are in Mensa. And it says, wait a minute, how could they be in Mensa and have really weak TI? Well, we've not defined TI correctly. Right. What TI is subjective thinker. Right. And that's all you can find. That's all you can. There's two ways to work out what TI is. You know, someone has a thinking preference, and you can sort of go through lots of different instances to see whether this person generally has a thinking preference for head over heart, and you can see whether somebody has an introverting preference, and you can deduce from that, like, what is introverting? Subjectifying, so subjective thinking, that's one thing. That's one thing you can do. And you can sort of go and find all the 4 TPs at the whole type level with the 4 MBTI dichotomies. And you can look for the informing rationals, the NTs. From a Kersey motivation point of view, it's like, okay, these people have the NT temperament and they're informing. And they've got INTP and ENTP preferences. Same with artisans. We've got the directive artisans, the concrete utilitarians, and we've got the abstract utilitarians with the NTs. So they're both utilitarians. And so when we look at the NTs, the NTPs, they're abstract utilitarians. So we've got the utilitarian theme there of thinking for themselves. And then we've got the concrete utilitarians, they're thinking for themselves. And so the STPs, so what have they got in common? And you've got this thinking for yourself in common. So you do interviews with all of look at the kind of intelligences they have. So for example, what do the NTPs do? Well, they tend to have strategic construction. And it goes, right, okay, well, there we're describing something empirical. We could say it's mathematical models and theories, but then it's TI with NE. The problem is the people who write these theories and typologies tend to describe TI with NE and call that TI. So, for instance, INTP Vanderhoop, and he called himself an introverted thinking type with subsidiary intuition. He described TI as a will to systematization. Not so quickly there, Vanderhoop, Johannes. It is for INTP. INTP definitely has a will to systematization, and you did because you came up with an improvement on Jung's theory, but that's not the need for STPs. Most STPs are using TI tactically, and they have a tactical intellect. So, for example, fighter pilot, day trader, but it's like short-term wins and expediency. Quick solutions with what is to hand at the moment, and 10 STPs will probably solve it in different ways. So, but that is TI with SE. But then when we're trying to describe, okay, what is TI in isolation, then we're looking at subjective thinking for oneself, and a theme of almost an arrogance of wanting to solve it one's own way. So, for example, it even slipped out with what I said there about this question, and my own sort of bit came out where I was going, you only solved that because you knew the formula. You cheated. Because they're my own preference of, no, I wanted you to solve it your way. So my own sort of TI preference there for wanting to solve it one's own way came through. Whereas, yeah. So So yeah, I sort of caught myself on there. So again, and you're going to get, and again, what Socionics would say about IEE, it's like, oh, they got really bad TI. Yes, but what does that mean? You know, because there are really smart ENFPs out there. So what are we saying about that? So this is why, this is one of the ways, because I'm big on getting the functions defined correctly. Right, so let's go through some of these. So, and again, because part of model A is strong, weak, weak, strong. So it has to be strong at TI. Right. So, and if you have it in these, in the model, so if the model says that TI means, oh, you've got weak logical reasoning, well, like I said, if anyone's watching this has a feeling preference and has a very high IQ, please let me know in the comments, because that would be interesting to note. Okay, what can you do and what can't you do when it comes to TI? Like, is it like when you read the description of TI, say you have a feeling type with high IQ, oh, I can do that bit, but that bit I can't do. Which bits of so it's helping to sort of narrow down what is TI by listening to very intelligent feeling types that theoretically have very weak TI. Because this is testing, we've got to test our descriptions of the functions to make sure it works. Because I'm not about pushing a theory, being a shill for a theory. I believe in these patterns and I'm testing them and I want to get towards the truth. All right, right there. There's some extra sound effects for you. Right, so what do we have? Can we go through some of these problems? Keep it on screen for longer so you get a proper look. Right, if I explain any more of this, I'll spoil it for you. But yeah, use your reasoning power. You know, I suggest you take your time. These are not the ones you get in IQ tests. These are the ones that you get in the books. I'll show you the book. These are these are not the quick ones that you get in the tests on a timed test. These are the ones where it's like, you got to think about this. So, let's present. There you go. Proper. This one wasn't in that book though. This one was Changing Trains. My solution for that was long. I actually have the solution in the book, but it's like, I'm not going to do it far away from the camera. There it is. There's a solution. Right. All right. But yeah. Interestingly, this one, I solved this one weirdly in an NI way. It's sort of just, I was getting a bit stuck, and then suddenly, it came to me. So yeah, that was odd. This one was more procedural. Right. So again, this sounds subjective to me. So it also contradicts what Jack says about thinking being external. It's more personal, it's more subjective to the individual. So yeah, types of value TI naturally question the consistency of beliefs that are taken for granted in everyday life. They strongly prefer to make decisions based on their own experience and judgment, as opposed to relying on external authorities for knowledge. So that is consistent. That version of TI is consistent with Kersey STPs. Right. So, rather than the logic of laws and about following strict rules. And then here, for for LII and LSI, although he or she is able to adopt others' rules, his own are always the last word, and these are subject to continual refinement. Whereas ISTJ, they do look towards an external authority for knowledge, because that's what's safer. So yeah, so with Socionics, look at different schools and how those different schools describe the sensory introverts, and you will find differences. This is because there is a they are not consistent, because even this with saying subjective rely on their own experience, this contradicts the Auschwitz information dichotomy of internal external. So what have we got? Have we got INTPs at Wikisocion saying that might be what Auschwitz says, but this is what I think, which tends to happen with INTPs. I mean, the Van der Hoop agreed with Jung, and then he goes 15 years later, it's like, nah, this is what I think. I think you got it wrong, Carl, when you described sensation. I think sensation is not the only factor in this function, and I'm going to rename it to instinct. And then you've got Kersey disagreeing and coming up with his own system. Galenko, another INTP, was up with his own system. He doesn't like it. He calls Model A information socionics. Yeah. And he has 2 definitions of TI. Right then. So those are... Did I go through the... I want to make sure they're all there. Those questions are all there for people. And should be able to see those. Yeah. Right then, so yes, I'd be interested in any comments from high IQ feeling types and what you think. And are you bad at TI? Because it's like, what can you do? What can't you do when you read about TI? So it's like, because your perspective could help to define TI, what it is and what it's not. How does your weak TI manifest? Because that will help us to define it. And so I think now, as for, it's just that there is a tendency for TI to rely on reasoning power, but it's a separate thing. Just like extroverting sensory instincting, SEM, is not the same thing as hand-to-eye coordination. But someone with that preference for extroverting sensor would do a lot of those activities, and that which would draw on hand-to-eye coordination. And it might be that someone with that TI preference would then naturally do a lot of activities that would then draw on reasoning power for rational elaboration of, say, especially NTPs, for elaboration of theories. But you could also get with feeling types, well, as Megan Lavota once said, feeling types have to go to school. So feeling types have to go through this sort of process. So a feeling type that goes through grad school would be maybe doing non-preferred activities, but then draw on and build up reasoning power. So yeah, I'm interested to read your thoughts in the comments. So I will end now. Oh, wait a minute. Did I show the book? Wait a minute. No, not end broadcast. Oh, no. What am I pressing? Stop screen. Yeah, did I show the book? There's probably other books out by now. Oh, I didn't show you the paper peddling one. I've not done that one. I've not attempted that one. You see, I didn't want to waste my time with this. Oh, actually, I have something interesting from... you see, I have a theory that most of the people in Mensa are ISTJs. Because there are a load of ISTJs. Probably like 12% of the population are ISTJs. And apparently, I will try to find the report. Apparently, they complained, the people that set up Mensa, they were a little bit snobbish, and most of the members, they said, oh, they like doing puzzles. And so I thought, maybe you got a lot of ISTJs in there. Let's have a look. Let's point that bit out. Mensa International, Mensa name, Mensa. Okay, let's have a look. Here we go. There we go. There it is. Right. Oh, gotta be careful there. Oh no. What am I showing? Wait a minute. Hey? Shh. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. F11. Right. I'm just being careful about what I'm showing. Right. There we go. So I'll put myself down there. So this weird bit here. There. He had unhappy that the majority of members came from working or lower class homes. Oh, how terrible. Well, Ware said, I do get disappointed that so many members spend so much time solving puzzles. I mean, the question would be, is that an intelligent use of time? Right. So, yeah, maybe that's something. And that's, so my theory would be maybe ISTJs that sort of get into it and love solving puzzles and can't necessarily see the bigger picture. Yeah, although you might say, Ben, that doesn't sound like very good TE. So yeah, just some speculation there. So yeah, but I do think that that just based on statistics, ISTJ is more likely to be in there out of all the ITs, and I do think there's going to be feeling types in there. And yes, IQ tests do mainly do the three kinds of intelligence: logical, mathematical, verbal, and visuospatial. Now, there's two really important kinds of intelligence as well that are not measured. Interpersonal intelligence, which is hugely important, and intrapersonal intelligence. Right. So, yeah. Stop sharing. Right then.